Hey, horror fans, welcome back to Jay versus Horror. That's right, we took a little hiatus, took a little breath, and now we're back. And today we're going to be talking about five more awesomely underrated films you can watch for free, absolutely legal. All you guys have to do is I'm going to put the links to the films in the description of the video here. You go down, you read the description. If you see one of the movies that I talked about, you want to go watch it, you click the link, boom, you're there, you watch it. It's totally free, it's totally legal. You do have to watch a few commercials, but it's just like watching regular TV, except for these films aren't edited in any way. So let's get started, guys, and let's talk about five awesomely underrated horror films you can watch for free. And this version has a little bit of a foreign flavor to it, and I didn't even realize that until I got about halfway through it, and I decided to stick with it. So our first film is from 2006. It's called Shitan, and that literally translates to the word devil in Arabic. Yeah, and this is a 2006 French erotic comedy horror film. It was directed by Chapirin, and it was also written by Kim Chapirin and Christian Chapirin, and it stars and was co-produced by the awesome Vincent Cassel, who we all remember from Irreversible. Actually, his wife Monica Bellucci at that time does a cameo in the film too. She was also in Irreversible. So yeah, fun stuff here, guys. Vincent Cassel is our bad guy, and he wears a ton of face prosthetics, and he just has this really creepy, dirty French guy look to him. Sorry, I mean, I don't mean to offend any French people, but I think if they see this movie, they understand what I'm talking about. It's very funny. It's also a horror movie. It gets lumped in with the French extreme movies like Inside and Martyrs and stuff like that. It's not really on that level of gore. This one's more like fun in a way, almost like a slasher type movie. Uh, but on Christmas Eve, a group of friends, Laja, Bart, and Ty, are led by Eve, a mysterious and attractive girl who they met at the Styx Club in Paris. They're drawn, by her to her house in the countryside. She says they can relax and have a good time. And there they are introduced to the eccentric housekeeper Joseph, played by Vincent Cassel. And he comes across as slightly dim-witted and eccentric, but slowly they start to discover that Joseph is a devil worshiper, and he has some sinister plans for the group. So yes, it is a very fun movie. Vincent Cassel gives a knockout performance. If you don't enjoy comedy in your horror, it's worth watching just to see Vincent Cassel's performance. This is something he wanted to do. I mean, he's a big-time actor overseas, and he's even a pretty big-time actor in the States. He's been in a lot of big movies, but he wanted to do this. He wanted to harken back to the old, like Lon Chaney days where people wore prosthetics in movies and gave great performances, and he does a good job here. It's a comedy, but it's good stuff. So let's move on, guys. At number 4, I have a classic. You have to see this one, guys. It's so good. Tombs of the Blind Dead from 1972. It's a Spanish-Portuguese horror film written and directed by Armando de Osorio. I'm terrible with names. The film was the first in Osorio's Blind Dead series, which spawned 3 official sequels, and there's some more sequels than that even. I just watched one that came out that was made by a totally different director, but it's called Curse of the Blind Dead, and it does follow the story. Osorio's films were Tombs of the Blind Dead, then Return of the Blind Dead in 73, The Ghost Galleon in 74, and Night of the Seagulls in 75. But this film's success helped kickstart the Spanish horror film boom of the early 70s. And Osorio has stated that Gustav Adolfo Bequer's Gothic horror legend El Monte de las Animas, 1862, and, of course, George Romero's Night of the Living Dead from 1968 were both heavily seen as influences for him in his filmmaking career, and especially here in this set of films. It's a fun ride, guys. It's really just exactly what he says it is, and I'll give him some props to Osorio for not trying to hide the fact that I was heavily influenced by Night of the Living Dead, because there's a lot of that here. I think the zombies are actually a little bit creepier in these films, though, as they are like Templar knights who have been blinded and are returning to get revenge, they're actually trying to create. There's a whole story here, guys. It's great if you like medieval stuff. That's in here, but then it takes a modern turn to uh, great like it's a legend, it's a curse, it's great stuff. I love this movie. Just rewatched the first two, trying to get through all of even the unofficial sequels, so I can do like a retrospective of the whole series because they're all fun. And yeah, if you can imagine being chased around by zombie Templar knights who are blinded, and uh, it's kind of a fun twist to it that the zombies are blind. So there's some fun stuff that they get to do when it comes to getting away. Also, when it comes to getting caught. So yeah, I highly recommend this one. It's a classic, guys. Maybe it's not up your alley because it's from 72 or something, but if you really are trying to check those classics off, go check out Tombs of the Blind Dead from 1972. We are moving on. And we're going to fast forward in time a little bit to 2010 with Korea's I Saw the Devil at number 3. That's right. Ooh, what a great movie, guys. A South Korean action thriller directed by Kim Ji-woon and written by Park Hong-jong, starring Lee Byung-hun and Xiaomin Sik. The film follows NIS agent Kim Soo-hun, who's played by Byung Lee, who is kind of a huge star now, really, in Asia, and he's made some appearances in some American films. I believe he played in the G.I. Joe films. And here he plays a secret agent whose wife, or fiance, I should say, is murdered by a serial killer. And he is able, through his contacts as a secret agent, to kind of investigate several different people and figures out who it is. And so instead of just going and arresting this guy, or just going and killing the guy, he starts following this guy around, and he's using his spy gear to listen in on what he does and track him around wherever he goes. And he doesn't do anything to him at first. It's very interesting because every time this guy will try to do something, he's a sociopath. He will try to rape people and kill people when nobody's watching. Anytime he thinks there's an opportunity to do something like that. So anytime the secret agent guy catches him starting to try to do something like that, he just breaks into the scene and beats this guy's ass relentlessly. But it takes another dark turn as our criminal here kind of figures out what's going on and decides to start playing back with what he can. And yeah, it's very interesting. I see it as like a Batman versus Joker type thing, but like on steroids and totally insane because this guy is a serial killer psychopath. He has friends that are cannibals, and he's one of the most vile villains of all time, and crazy as hell, and willing to try anything to mess with this guy once he figures out that he's messing with him. So great movie from 2010, guys. If you haven't seen this one, it's a must-see. I mean, it's from 2010 to 2020, that decade. I would call this, well, actually, if you look at it like that, this would be the decade before that because it would go 11 to 20. Actually, it's 10 years. But anyway, it's a great film. Let's say the last 20 years, it's probably the top 100 films of the last 20 years, period, no matter what genre you're looking at. So let's move on, guys. This one, at number 2, is a shout-out recommendation. Land of the Creeps, one of my favorite podcasts. They're talking about Edgar Allan Poe movies and stories and things like that for their next episode. So, guys, yeah, check out Land of the Creeps on Spotify or just check them out on Facebook anytime you can. Great podcast. But I chose, and I'm going to be talking about this for their podcast, at number 2, Two Evil Eyes from 1990. I love this one. It's an anthology, but it's only 2 stories. So it's, and they're put together it's an Italian-American horror film. It does have a little bit of a foreign flavor to it. It was written and directed by George Romero and Dario Argento. The 2 iconic horror filmmakers had previously worked together on the very popular Dawn of the Dead in 1978, wanted to work together again, and 12 years later they did in Two Evil Eyes. And basically it's 2 separate tales, both largely based on the works of Edgar Allan Poe. And the first one is The Facts in the Case of Mr. Vandelmar. And it's directed by George Romero, and it stars Adrian Barbeau. And it's kind of a traditional mix of Poe's horror and social commentary. The first one is decent, but it's more like an extended Tales from the Crypt. And but the second part, the Black Cat, directed by Dario Argento, it's not just your usual retelling of the Black Cat, guys. There's been a million retellings of the Black Cat. It's one of Poe's more famous stories. And but this one's directed by Argento, and it stars Harvey Keitel, and it blends a number of Poe stories together into this new narrative, and it's really great. Harvey Keitel's performance is spot on. Great direction from Argento, and both of these tales were filmed, and they take place in contemporary Pittsburgh. So, yeah, very interesting set of. It's kind of like two little films put together, and the second one is really great, guys. The performance from Harvey Keitel, the story, the mixture of stories from Poe. It's a really ingenious way to retell some Poe stuff without, just giving us the same thing over and over. So good stuff. And at number one, guys, we have a mean, mean, mean film from Germany. It's called Urban Explorer. It's also known as The Depraved. And yeah, it's a 2011 German horror film directed by Andy Fetcher. And it stars Natalie Kelly, Nick Eversman, Klaus Stiglermeyer, and Max Rimmelt. And it's a good film, guys. It's a modern film. It's from 2011, and it has a modern kind of twist to what it's doing here. We have a group of kids who meet online in Berlin. One of them's from the U.S., one's from Asia, one's from South America, all different places. And they meet in Berlin to go explore these subterranean tunnels underneath Berlin because there's this legend of the Father Bunker down there, which is supposed to be one of Hitler's bunkers. And there's supposed to be miles and miles of tunnels and intricate catacombs and stuff like that that lead to it. And they believe that if they get down there and they find this Father Bunker, which is, probably made up, that they're going to find a bunch of Nazi art and things like that were hidden, and riches and all this other kind of stuff. So they go on this adventure. They have a tour guide who takes them through a nightclub, and then they go into these tunnels, and they're underneath the city, and just one bad thing happens after the next. And finally, they run into a monster. It's a human being, if you can imagine that this is a human being, but he's a freaking monster. And he's been surviving in these tunnels. It seems like there's some lineage here, like some kind of, almost like Hills Have Eyes type people, just to explain it in American terms or North American terms. Almost like Hills Have Eyes type people, and he's like the last in the line of these people who have descended down from Nazis who hid inside these tunnels after the war and refused to come out and stuff like that. And he is if Jason Voorhees was a Nazi, that's what this guy kind of reminds me of. He's over the top, man. And so yeah, it's funny. I've watched a lot of German films lately, talking about the doing the hardcore horror reviews and the Olaf Ittenbach films from Germany. So these aren't, I want to say this movie's not super gory, but it actually is. If you're not into super gory films, I think you'll like this one a lot. It's got a couple great gore scenes, and it's a good slasher type film that has a setup that haven't seen a whole lot. I mean, I've seen it before, but not a ton, right? Usually when the kids go down into the tunnel, something spooky happens, or they end up in some other kind of crazy Twilight Zone dimension or something like that, and they can't figure out how to get out. Or there's a monster, some kind of subterranean black lagoon monster. But this is not that. This is a straight up, cannibal, crazy asshole movie. So guys, yeah, I think you'll like it. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's definitely a fun horror movie. It's not for the kids. This one, maybe not so much for the kids, but great film. That's Urban Explorer from 2011. And guys, that's 5 free films, 5 awesomely underrated free films that you can go watch anytime you want to. You just go down to the description there, you click the link to the film you want to see, and boom, you are there, my friend. And we will be back next time We got something worth talking about, guys. Bye.